On this debut edition of Another View, a Virginia Beach NAACP official calls the third African American to serve on city council an Uncle Tom. Fair or unfair? Republican primary presidential hopeful Michelle Bachman signs a marriage pact that put together by a group that believes black children were better off during slavery than they are today. And some say the recession should be called the Black Man Session. Our roundtable pundits, Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, Bill Thomas, and Wil LaVeist are here to discuss these and other issues facing the African American community. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee, and it's Another View, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee, and I want to welcome all of our television viewers of our TV show to the radio. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with our show on TV, Another View discusses the issues and celebrates the successes of the African American community. And we had been on TV for 2.5 years, and unfortunately, because of budget cuts and increases in costs and so forth, we have been taken off television, we along with What Matters. However, we were lucky to be saved and brought over to radio. So we're excited to be here with everyone. And we hope that you'll join us every Friday as we talk about issues that are pertinent to all of us here in Hampton Roads, but particularly affect the African American community. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee, and I am happy today to start our debut show with our roundtable pundits because they are some of the favorites that people who saw the TV show are very familiar with them, and I think all of you out there listening on radio will become familiar with them and learn to love them as much as we do. So, having said that, let me welcome Roger Chesley. He is the columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and his column runs on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Hi, Roger.
Hello, Barbara. Thank you for having me on this.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me. Carol Pretlow is a political science professor with Norfolk State University. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Good to have you with us
Always
today.
wonderful to be here.
Fantastic. Community activist Bill Thomas. Hi, Bill.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. How you
Hampton
doing?
Roads, love everybody.
All right.
Especially them women down in Miami Beach.
Oh, my. I'm sure we'll be
God.
talking about that. And Wil LaVeist, he is a journalist, author, and talk show host. And you can hear Will's show on 88.1 WHOV FM on Wednesdays. Thanks for joining us, Will.
Thank you, and thank you for that plug.
Absolutely. You've done the same for me, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So, Virginia Beach NAACP. This week upset because their candidate was not selected to fill a vacancy on city council. Prescott Sherrod was selected as the third African American in that city's history to serve on city council. And a official with the NAACP calls Prescott Sherrod an Uncle Tom. Fair, unfair, Roger?
It's unfair, and it's almost difficult to say where to start with that whole incident. First of all, Uncle Tom. How many times do we even hear that term used now? Mm-hmm. So it seems almost crazy that it would even be used in the 2011. But secondly, a black candidate was selected. He obviously was liked by the business interests and had been on the board of Town Bank, the same place as the mayor had been. Mm-hmm. So could it have been favoritism? Sure, it could have been favoritism, but that's often how appointments come down to. It was not an elected position. And it also suggested to me that the Beach NAACP was marginalizing itself. You don't say something like that in public unless you really, really want to be examined and you really want to be known that you're being divisive. I mean, I was stunned when I heard it.
Bill, were you surprised that they attacked the person who was appointed as opposed to the people doing the appointment?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm not surprised by the tenor of what the man said. I'm just surprised he didn't say handkerchief head, Uncle Tom. You have a black man here who's been in business. I don't know him, but I've met Mr. Sherrod. He's a good businessman, does transportation for the federal government and a contractor. He does all the things that you'd want somebody to do, but he doesn't fit the stereotype. You have these Negro, what I call them, specialists, which are now the NAACP, and they go out here and they try to agitate issues that aren't important, aren't irrelevant. And so what else? They have nothing else to say. They have no mission. They're sitting up here praying. They're praying before the city council instead of doing the work that they need to be doing. It's really a sad commentary. Lastly, race now is irrelevant. It doesn't. It's old school. Move on. NAACP, you're irrelevant. You are embarrassing the folks that gave their blood and sweat and tears. The NAACP in Virginia Beach and Sandra Smith Jones and all the rest of these guys that get nickels and dimes from the white man to go out here.
Sandra Smith Jones is on the
school board. She
right?
used to be with the NAACP, and you see them fronting for Republicans like Senator McWaters, and you see them fronting for the mayor like Mayor Sessoms. If you go to Virginia Beach and you want to meet with the mayor and you're black, you got to go through the Negro specialist. So there you go.
Carol.
Wow, where do I begin? Negro specialist.
That's a new term.
Irrelevant. That incites as much conversation as handkerchief head. I don't even know where to begin. But at any rate, I'm
Do you really
appalled.
believe they're irrelevant
No,
at this
I
point?
don't. I do not. I think the NAACP was conceived to deal with issues that affect the African American community. There are some issues that we still have to deal with. Employment is one. Housing is another. Education. And I think they are very on point to focus on those. But I don't think in the context of dealing with any of those, we can afford name calling. We don't like it when other people call us names or designate categories that are derogatory. So we can't afford to do it to ourselves. And I think that just is appalling.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any disagreement on this. And I talked to both of the gentlemen, just being in the media at different times. I don't know either one of them very well. But with the high tension that was going on within the situation, it would seem to me that, Mr. Wright allowed his emotions to get a little bit ahead of him and to blurt out that statement. And that what he should probably do is just come back and just say, look, I misspoke. It was a little heated. And I think that would be the appropriate thing to do at this time, because as what has already been said, when you get into name calling and all of that, you really discredit your own argument. When you reduce it down to name calling. And, again, Mr. Sherrod is a business person, which in my personal opinion, the NAACP and other organizations that were so focused on getting the laws changed because of discrimination ought to be focusing on economic empowerment. They ought to be focusing on academic achievement, and they ought to be looking at the incarceration rate.
Amen.
That's a good point.
Those are the things. So what the NAACP and a lot of organizations need is a refocus on what are the current issues that are really plaguing us.
So you agree with me?
Well, sometimes I do.
Well, Bill, no, I don't agree that the NAACP is irrelevant. I think you say some things sometimes just to see what the reaction will be. I think the NAACP was wrong in this instance because, for one, a candidate who is black was selected. And
I guess that's where
and secondly, in a few months' time, this appointee is only going to be in office for about 4 months anyway before you're going to have another election. I believe Miss Bullock. Miss Bullock, she ran a good race, good contest the last time, got 46% of the vote. She obviously is going to have a good shot if she decides to run again this fall. I would be surprised if she doesn't. So, I think some of the anger and some of the discontent, it was just a bad way of expressing it. And again, I think I agree with Will to the sense that, are you focusing, is the Beach NAACP focusing on the right things? Yes, you do want people who are representing your interests on the city council. And there is a concern, I think, whether that's really happening right now.
Well, it's
in the
interesting
beach.
because at least in the article that I read in the paper, Mr. Sherrod said, I have not met with the NAACP, and once I meet with them, I mean, how do they know that he's not on their side?
He's not
yet?
a member. I mean, I disagree with you guys.
Are you a member?
No more.
Oh,
No
okay.
more. I used to be a lifetime member. You paid it something a month or something.
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped. But Roger, I disagree with you. I see where the NAACP,
There's a surprise.
the NAACP is being
How do you
sued in New York
unbecome a
because
lifetime member?
they
How
don't
do
want to. You pay
does that happen?
monthly. You pay monthly. It's
there
like
is
$1,000 or
lifetime thing,
$500 you pay the lifetime memberships.
Yeah.
And actually, I may have paid it up to the honest God truth. But the issue is with New York and the charter schools where the poor working black women and men that are trying to send their kids to charter schools are suing the NAACP because the NAACP don't want those kids to have an option in education. We've had murder galore here in Hampton Roads, a man beating his wife, a lady shot over in Hampton, a little girl just graduated from high school, shot dead in her house. And all
that's the NAACP's fault.
they should be doing some leadership to tell people to get God in their
We
life or something.
all should be doing some leadership
But the
on that
NAACP
bill.
used to do that.
But I'm saying we all should be doing it. It's not the NAACP's. It's not the NAACP's or the urban leagues or
Yes, it is.
or any organization's lone responsibility. It is all of our responsibility. It is the
that's an
schools. It is the organizations. It's the churches. And so don't blame the NAACP.
I am.
Blame us all. And
Well-
blame yourself too then.
Well, you all raised earlier, you said that he had talked to the NAACP. But clearly, Mr. Sherrod is a player active in the community, and the NAACP is individuals are active in the community. They know each other. There and this comment sort of, I don't want to say it reeks of a personal thing going on, but again, not knowing that well the individuals, having only talking to them, it just seems that you got emotions, you got some personal things going on here. They're familiar with him. Mr. Sherrod hasn't been hiding. People know who he is, and they just really need to correct that and move forward and focus on the things that's going to help the entire community. And those specific things that I talked about are really key in the black community right now.
Okay. Moving on to Michelle Bachman. She is running for the Republican nomination for president, and she signed a marriage declaration, a pro-marriage declaration.
Amen.
And she said, "I'm okay. I'm
Amen.
there. I'm
Let's
there
get
with you
married."
there." But in this declaration, the preamble said, and I quote, "Slavery has a disastrous impact on African American families, yet sadly a child born into slavery in 1860 was more likely to be raised by his mother and father in a two-parent household than was an African American baby born after the election of the USA's first African American president," unquote. Now, that was the statement that was in the marriage document. Michelle Bachman did sign it, and she stands by it. And we all know she's had some issues with revisionist history. But
Yeah,
Carol?
I think she needs to rewind and revisit history, because when you look at slavery as an institution, you see the disintegration of the family based on sales of one person to another and the total disconnect of family. So I think she needs a history lesson here.
I just think it's another case of politicians doing what politicians typically do, which is talk to their particular base and make decisions based on who they think is going to support them. And so you have this group that puts in there this statement that is an obvious jab at President Obama to try to make this correlation between slavery and the conditions now, because they are talking to that same base that is really not interested in the upliftment of the black community.
how frightened should we be that this type of rhetoric continues, because people believe this stuff if they really don't pay attention to history to understand what's going on?
The politicians don't care. They are only talking to that base that is likely to vote for them. And then when it blows up like this, they just continue to, just pass it on, let the wave die, and go back to talking to that base. And that's what people need to remain focused on. Michelle Bachman is not trying to get African American votes.
Yeah, but even though she is talking to her base, she still needs some others to bridge the gap between that base to give her the percentages for the election.
No,
Not for the primary.
Nope, she's only concerned about who is going to vote for her, who is going
her
to
to
fund her, and that is it. And if that is going to advance that agenda, then she will sign off and say, and then defend and worry about it later.
If you take the emotion out of it, get all the emotion, nothing was more cruel and nothing has happened to a people worse than the slavery inflicted upon African American people here in the United States of America that has never fully been ever told. Mm-hmm. But if you take that emotion out of it, you go back to roots and you look at that whole legacy after 1860 to 1864 when we were getting out of the slavery and going to Reconstruction, are the numbers actually inaccurate?
So you're saying that children were better off then?
No. I'm just saying, what did the statement say?
The statement says that a child born into slavery in 1860 was more likely to be raised by his mother and father in a two-parent household.
Okay.
I don't think statistics were offered. I read some of the comments on this, and I don't think there were any statistics offered. And that was the first thing that made me stop. Was what, given how slavery uprooted families
and tore families
Carol was
apart.
talking about, tore them apart. What is she talking about? And secondly, did you read the statement that you just signed?
Now she did say that she only signed the vow part, that she was not signing the preamble to the vow. I think that's. What do you think in terms of that type of a separation?
Well, I think legally there's a problem there because when you have a preamble, that is a summary of a whole lot of things that go into the document itself. And so it's very rare that someone say, well, I will sign this, but I'm not signing that. No.
The statement says, a child born into slavery in 1860, the beginning of the Civil War, was more likely to be raised by his father and mother in a two-parent household than an African-American baby born today. Is that true or false?
Is she saying that she's signing?
No, is that true or false? Forget all the other stuff.
But what I say is that
is it true or false?
It could be true.
What is illegitimacy in the African American community today?
No, it could very well be true. But let's not get distracted by that and focus on the purpose of this. Hold on. The purpose of this statement being put in that document was the subliminal message is that not even an African American president has been good for African American people. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the opposition candidate is going to be a better option. So she's talking about, this was about marriage, right? She signs off on that because those people of that base that are likely to vote for her would want her to support something like this.
So you don't have a problem with the statement, it's just the context of the statement is what you have a problem with.
I have a problem with both.
Me too,
I have a problem with both. And I think
Roger?
It's also helpful if you read Mary Sanchez's op-ed that we ran today talking about, hey, even for those who are professional men and women now, they're generally marrying later. The divorce rates in this country still about 1 in 2. Mm-hmm. So, yes, marriage is good when it works for the people involved. You've had so many women who maybe in years past would have stayed in bad marriages and they're saying, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. You have other women who might not be as rich as some of their middle class or upper class brethren who say, well, who are the options for me? If I get married, is it going to be somebody who has a job? Mm-hmm. We got 9% unemployment right now. Is it going to be somebody who has education? What are my prospects?
Stay in a bad marriage?
Yeah.
Aren't you? Did you hear the vows when you said them? Stay in a bad marriage. Don't you supposed to stay until you make a union? You have kids. I mean, don't you try to work on the badness? I mean,
why
maybe you can't work on the badness?
A lot of people do, but a lot of people would rather not stay in.
Take the easy way out.
That's not easy.
I'm not going to get into. I've been married for almost 24 years, so I'm not going to put mine. I don't know what your situation might have been, how many years you got in. However, it is a challenging compact
Well,
that you
let,
make.
let me say this: that the group, the marriage, they were sponsored by the family leader,
Yeah,
and they
and
did
who is this
take.
group? It's not even a well-known group.
And they did. It's an Iowa-based group of Christian social conservatives, but they did take the statement out eventually.
Yeah,
Even
after they
though
got
she
the
had already
publicity.
signed it,
And after they got the publicity.
and after all the
Again,
publicity had come along. Absolutely.
Back to my
Well,
point. The point was to make a jab at President Obama. That was the point. And a lot of times we get caught up in the minutia of these things and we get distracted from what was the exact point, and to realize that why Michelle Bachman continues to stumble on these things is because she's talking to that particular base.
Right, but we know that this is not the first time that Michelle Bachman's
Right.
been involved in a slavery controversy,
Right.
statements around slavery, and how she talked about how the founding fathers fought so hard to eliminate slavery, Carol.
Yeah, and I still say she needs to go back to history lesson, because when you go back in history and look at the founding fathers, you have George Washington, who had slaves. You had Thomas Jefferson, who had about 600 slaves and who did not free his slaves, Thomas Jefferson, at his death. Now, people argue that that's because he owed money to the state and all of that, but the reality is he didn't free them. And there were others in that same genre who did have slaves.
So I know some of your commenting, though. You're talking about also the problem that we have with single motherhood.
Yeah, y'all want to just step over the issue. The issue is I don't care what she says. She's a politician. And I agree with you on that. And she is speaking to her base. But the accuracy of the statement, I think we need to go look it up and see if it's true.
I think they
And if it
need
is
to go,
true,
I
it's an
think they
indictment
need to
on
go,
us.
I think they need to go look it up and tell us what the percentages is. I have no feeling that they're necessarily being credible on this. I'd never heard of this group before this controversy came up.
I mean, a lot of marriages between African Americans who were slaves at the time weren't even recognized as marriages. So that's why I say not even to get caught up
okay.
into that is a waste of energy.
What do you think?
Focus on
do
what
we need more kids growing with mothers and fathers?
Absolutely.
Yes, obviously we do. But I don't need Michelle Bachman, who I don't think could care less about black children, and whose husband has made it clear he thinks there's something wrong if you're gay or lesbian. You know,
I
think
didn't say that.
I was shorthanding it for you so you could understand it. but that's really, I mean, it seems like they really don't want, they don't care about blacks and they don't care about gays.
See, that's easy to say. That's easy to say. Just because he has a different perspective of how he views the gay community and his religion and
there's
his
something
life.
wrong with them. He thinks that there's something wrong. They shouldn't be that way. And I'm telling you, I think that tells you a lot about that
That's a
couple.
whole different show. But for you to just
think
flip
it's
it
a-
off and say that to
I
me
think
is a little bit indicting on what you're saying and what you believe.
Well, I was just giving it back to you like you like to give it to all of us.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine.
And almost half past the hour. If you're just joining us, this is Another View, and we're talking with our roundtable pundits, Roger Chesley, a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow, who is a professor of political science at Norfolk State University, Bill Thomas, our favorite community activist, and Wil LaVeist, author, journalist, and talk show host with WHOV-FM. So, okay, I get where you guys are going on Michelle Bachman. Let's go on and talk
I
about.
think she's a lovely lady. I think she's a good candidate, and I just think just because some men don't like to see women in powerful positions, she is getting this nonsense that a man would never get.
So you think that people are being too hard on her?
Oh, I just think they're being unfair.
Well,
Well,
what she's playing on is white fear and
Lord.
white guilt.
Oh, Lord.
That's what they use. Politicians use to talk to that base. That's what they knowingly do it. And so I think that in her case and others who use these kinds of statements and sign these kinds of agreements, that their base ought to recognize that they are actually playing on their fears, playing on their guilt to get their vote.
Their base
to get
is
their
ignorant
vote.
and stupid.
No,
So
I'm not. I didn't say that.
stupid.
I didn't say that
We're
at all.
ignorant. We don't understand that.
Oh, so you're agreeing with me? That is what they're doing.
I'm not agreeing with you.
okay.
Leave that woman alone.
On that note, let's move on to black unemployment. Before we talk about black unemployment, we do have some statistics that Lisa Godley put together for us.
African Americans have been hit hard during this period of economic recovery, and that's stating it mildly. While unemployment for the nation peaked at about 10% in 2009, the numbers in the African American community continue to rise. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, last year, the average unemployment rate for blacks was 16%, compared to 8.7% for whites and 12.5% for Hispanics. Nearly half of all unemployed blacks were without work for roughly 7 months or longer. Part of the reason for high unemployment among blacks is the number of large cuts in government jobs. There are some 430,000 fewer jobs now than when the recession began 4 years ago. The majority of those cuts came last year and in the first half of this year. Less than 4% of African Americans are self-employed, and half of blacks who are employed full-time earn 80% of the income acquired by their white counterparts. It's a gap in pay that hasn't changed during the recession or the recovery period. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
I had the chance to listen in on a conference call held by the Department of Labor last week, and they just released a report called The Black Labor Force in the Recovery. It's got all kinds of statistics, some of which Lisa just brought to us, on unemployment in our community. And the one question that never came up, although it was kind of the elephant in the room, is that a lot of the programs that the federal government has focuses on low income and less educated programs to help those people. But this recession has really hit the black middle class in a way that's never happened before. So there doesn't seem to be any help for them, Roger.
I don't know there's a whole lot of help for a lot of us. I mean, you look at so many times there were unemployment benefits that had to be extended for people across the spectrum. I think any of us who we grumble about having to do furlough days, and we grumble about maybe having to have fewer hours that we're actually allowed to work. But if you are not self-employed, I think you're very happy with what you're getting right now. And it's a tough time. I don't necessarily know what the solutions are. Can we do some types of retraining that can get people back in the workforce? Maybe, but it seems like so many jobs have fled our borders. So much of the cheaper skilled jobs are not available in this country anymore. And then even for the middle class, we've tried to have somewhat of a recovery in this country, but a lot of employers, especially the larger employers, are not necessarily hiring. Mm-hmm. They have the money, they have some reserves, they're not hiring. So I don't know what the switch is going to be, that what would trigger huge hiring in the country. I really don't know.
Black men, though, at 16%, they're expecting a high of, or the black community as a whole at 16%, they're expecting a high of almost 25% for black men of being unemployed, which is Depression era numbers we're talking about. Will, it's tragic.
And I think that you have a couple of things. I mean, it's a very complex situation. There's a few things going on that I want to point out.
Okay.
When Bill said earlier that race is irrelevant, okay, in these stats you see that even among college education, the gap between blacks and whites remains. So let's look at what happens in a job situation. A lot of times we hire people who we know, who we are more familiar with, and who we feel comfortable with. So if racism is an aspect or some other things an aspect, you're not comfortable with the person, that person doesn't get the job, whether they're qualified or not. Here's another aspect that happens, is that a lot of times African Americans get in positions of power where they can hire people who they would feel comfortable with, right, and make change and improve diversity. And what happens? They do what? They don't. And in fact, I can tell you personally, from my experience of being out there in this working world, I can say that I have been equally burned by whites and blacks.
In terms of hiring.
In terms of hiring. And I have been helped more by whites.
Amen.
So you
Preach
got
the
these
truth,
two.
brother.
You got these two aspects that
That's
happen,
true.
and then the third is preparation. I said earlier about academic achievement and incarceration. There's a direct correlation between lack of academic achievement, ending
And
up
the
in
number of
prison, lack of academic achievement. You're not in a position to be able to get employment, so you end up doing what? Getting on the street hustling to do what you need to do to survive. And I've spent time talking in the prisons, trying to talk with young men to get them to renew their minds and to think differently. If you renew your mind, you'll make better decisions. You're going to find two things in prison. You're going to find a lot of talent, and you're going to find a lot of African Americans. So what's happening is direct correlation. Low academic achievement leads to difficulty obtaining employment, leads to I got to hustle and do what I need to do to survive.
We even know that they determine the number of prisons they're going to build based on academic scores of third graders.
Yeah.
So but Carol, you had a look of incredulity on your face.
I was interested in your comment about those who have gotten academic preparation, going to college, and not being able to be employed by some of the same people who are complaining about racism. And that's interesting to me because I wasn't aware of that.
The stats in there bear it out.
Well, I don't doubt it, but why?
Crabs in the barrel.
Well,
I don't know.
When we get a power, when we get grant power, and it's just two ways, and Will and I talked about this a lot. I think especially when our African Americans, let's take a political, because political turns into currency. We elect these black people in these black districts, and there's good politicians, both good, black and white, and et cetera, and et cetera. There's one guys doing a wonderful job, and ladies, but there's some that are doing absolutely nothing. We have Delegate Algie Howe on the Appropriations Committee for the Commonwealth of Virginia, along with 2 or 3 other African Americans that are on the Appropriations Committee. And one of the appropriators on one of the Appropriations Committee, a delegate out of Petersburg, she sponsored an amendment for UVA's cancer program. Now, she doesn't even live in Charlottesville. They don't even want her there. And she's in Petersburg. And instead of helping her own community and her own race, she helps white folks. And then we elect these other folks down there, Algie Howe, Delegate Algie Howe, not loving to death. But he goes down there, sits up there, and shucks and jives down there with that the principal manager of that, Bill Howe, who's the chairman, and he also is the Speaker of the House. And these folks do nothing, and then we just sit and take it. And then what happens is all the power is controlled, all the money goes to ODU, and that's fine. I'm not arguing about that. But your public school, Norfolk State, they're not sitting up there doing anything for Norfolk State. They'll sit right there and let those white folks hammer stuff through, and the African Americans as well, issues that are going to their community and their constituents, which they should be doing, and they sit there and do nothing. They say nothing. They just sit there like bumps in the log, the Negro at the door, and they do nothing.
I'm just going to point this out, though. It'd be one thing if that were the case and his party was in power. It's quite another thing when he's in the minority and the Republicans are in power. The Democrats are not going to get that many bills passed, and they're not going to get too many chances at getting some of the things they want through. It's usually the majority party. I know. I'm just pointing
Roger,
that out.
If they stood together, all 28 strong, and said, "This is what we want. We're not going to pass anything. We're not going to do anything unless you do something for our constituents."
And they still wouldn't be in the majority.
They still wouldn't be in the majority. But again, in a statewide campaign today with the 20% African-American voting population, a white candidate cannot win statewide unless he has African. You know
That's
that.
true.
He cannot. No way possible. So if you put the politics with the little bit of power that they do have, and instead of saying, well, I'm going to help UVA, which is fine, that's great, but UVA already has help. Why don't you try to figure out how you're going to help your own constituency, Virginia State and Norfolk State and Hampton University? They won't do it.
Well, let's get this back down.
Go ahead, Will.
out of
politics,
Richmond, and let's get it right back down.
But that's where the money
to
is.
where it's a interview and a decision being made about having a job. You asked a question, Carol,
Yeah,
about
and I want
some of the
that
things that
answered.
happen.
Yeah.
Let me give you a scenario, some of the things that happen. Here we are. I'm an African American in a office meeting. I'm in a meeting with my contemporaries, and I'm in a position of potentially hiring. Someone here sitting at the table makes a statement about another African American about their quality of their work. Now here I am. I know this other person. I've broken bread with them. I know them. But because the winds in the office are moving in a direction that if I stand up for this person, my job could be at risk, I'm not going to do it.
So it's office politics.
So it's office politics. And again, it's a character issue. It is not even so much a race issue, but it's a character issue about whether you feel that your position is threatened and whether as an African American, if I show myself to be too what's the word I'm looking for? Too welcoming or wanting to bring
too much on the side of the African
right
American.
now, I might be at risk. My job might be at risk. I'm not going to put myself out there.
Well, that's
And
a
those are the things that
protective
happen.
mode. So it's natural for people to protect their own position. Now, I'm thinking about these situations where it's not that you're going to lose your position, but someone comes in and they have a good resume, good educational foundation.
If all of these companies have in their values that we value diversity, then if you're in a position of hiring someone and you value diversity, you're going to look at that and say, got people that are qualified. I'm looking to increase my company with talent because it's good business.
I don't agree.
And they don't do that.
I hear what you're saying. I looked at a survey, and I'll send it to Roger because he's going to ask me to send it to him. It's 10 years old. But they did.
I like it a little bit more current.
But it's
than
old.
that.
I haven't seen it. It's 10 years old.
Okay.
It said 80% of African-American college graduates work for the government in one form or the other.
Yes, which is part of the reason why they're saying now that the
That we have
unemployment
such a hard
rate
time.
is so high.
Right. And my son can't inherit my job and my government job. What we don't have is businesses. We don't own businesses. And the staple for getting that kind of creative capital to own businesses starts with government in Hampton Roads. 40 to 50 to 60% of the base of our business is related to government. Okay. We have elected officials here. We have to own businesses. We can't rely on these jobs. And if we don't have the pathways that our elected officials are showing us how to own businesses, we don't even build our own prisons. I mean, it gets that bad. If I was a black elected official, I'm going to run for the General Assembly. And I'm going to stand up in the General Assembly, and I'm not going to let them adjourn until they say, yes, I want to build another $2 billion prison. And I want that black man to build a prison because black people are going to be put up in there because you already did the third grade survey that know that 100% of them going forward is going to be there. So why don't we just own the whole doggone thing?
Well, the state's going to own it, first of all. And we have we happen to have a prison that's not being used right now. The Washington Post had some stories about that. I think it was about a month ago, in the last month or so. Yeah, business ownership would help. Educational achievement helps. Reading, staying out of trouble. All those things help in getting jobs. But I like that idea. I'm going to see if maybe you and I can work together on getting that ownership on that prison.
That's going to be my only campaign promise.
And then you're going to have another problem is where is this prison going to be located? And then you're going to have the debate about like, I don't want to live within 2 miles or 5 miles over prison, and who owns that property?
Carol, don't encourage them.
Don't
encourage them in this. Don't encourage them in this.
But here's the thing that I still want to point out, because everybody talks about how education takes you to that next level, but at the same time, if there aren't any jobs, if people aren't hiring, what are our people going to do? Because our community is going to suffer from this.
What Bill
this.
said. There was some nugget of truth in what he said.
Oh God!
And,
Lord.
I'm scared.
And the solution, and again, and those stats bear out that African American business ownership is far lower than the other groups. Now, where I disagree with Bill at is that Asian Indian community, a person from China comes here, is not looking to look at somebody in the legislature that looks like them to make them decide that they're going to start a business. So you don't need a politician to show you the way like Moses to start a business. So we, as solutions, and why I started my business and why I teach my children, you get educated and then you go into business for yourself, is because that's how you're going to grow, attain wealth. Why are some of those jobs, African Americans, government jobs? Because the government jobs are the pathway into a government job has less obstacles than me sitting beside you on the other side of a desk deciding, well, you're qualified and all of that, but you know what? You don't fit our team. That's why you have more African Americans in government jobs. So the solution is more businesses. We need businesses and employ people, and that's how you're going to attain wealth.
We haven't been taught to be entrepreneurs. We haven't been taught to be risk takers.
Well,
we haven't been taught to stop relying
is
on.
absolutely doing that.
I agree.
The younger generation, and this is why I'm so encouraged. And I agree. Because they didn't need any politician to tell them what to do. In fact, they recognize that when the black middle class, the very individual I keep talking about, began abandoning them and saying, became a class issue, they realized, hey, we got to turn around this hustling mentality and turn it into a real,
but just
legit
real quickly though, you have to be realistic. Right. You have to be realistic. 60 to 70% of the business is going to have some correlation with government in Hampton Roads, with the largest Navy shipyard. So we're here. You have to involve that, because the currency of politics is the currency of making money in Hampton Roads through the government and through your elected officials.
And I think you always have to look at what seems to be the best path at this particular time for me to make a living, for me to have a career, for me to do some things. 30 years ago, when I got into the journalism business, it was a good business to get into. There were a lot of opportunities. No one could foresee at that time the retrenchment that was going to take place, so many newspapers closing, so many jobs that were going to be cut, say 20 to 30 years down the line. So you've always got to look and see, what's the path look like now, reassess, what's my skill level, am I doing the right thing? I mean, I think it's great if you're an entrepreneur and you want to do that, but not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's going to be able to have the capital to sink into a business and make it successful. So you always have to, have some sense of whether it's going to be the best thing for you to do.
Okay, so based on everything that you all have said, then is it fair for everyone then to criticize the Obama administration by not bringing more jobs or not creating more jobs? Can the president really create jobs?
No, absolutely
Carol,
not.
Let's Carol talk. She hasn't talked in a while.
Well, I say it's not fair. No, he cannot create jobs. And the very thing that he did do, that stimulus package, the idea was that those people who own banks and big businesses, that would filter down and help those who were getting started in business. Now, that's where the scenario changes a lot, because it didn't happen, and he's the first to admit that it didn't happen. So we can't expect him to create a whole new world. He can't. He can do what he can do in terms of promoting and asking his party to support him, but the reality is he doesn't have the majority in the House, and the Senate, there's a slight majority there. That's the scenario, just as it is in the state.
Okay.
So
we have another topic that I know is going to drive Bill crazy, but the NAACP National
his friends again
has come out along with the National Association of Black Journalists to bitterly complain to network officials that there are no African American anchors in prime time on any network, including the cable networks, and that there have been several opportunities for African Americans to be appointed to various positions. CBS just got a new anchor, CNN just changed its lineup, etc. Nothing happened. Your reaction, Bill?
I just think there you go. I think what Malcolm X used to say, the chickens have come home to roost. Now you liberals see how liberals treat each other at CNN. They're not going to treat you fairly when jobs and money and women become the common denominator of what's successful. Those folks take care of themselves first every time, and that's what they're doing.
Okay, but is anybody on Fox either?
Excuse me?
I said, is anyone on Fox News either?
No, but does Fox project that? And Mr. Williams is on Fox, and he does a very good job. He gets paid a lot of money. And there's this African-American lady, just a very good-looking lady. I can't recall her name right now. She's on there. And what difference does race make anyhow? You want somebody.
So you don't think it's important that
No.
that people see themselves or see someone
No.
from their culture?
I think the liberal media, like CNN, has just, the chickens have come home to roost. They don't give a darn about diversity. They don't give a darn about nothing but making money, and they'll make it at the behest of the black man or the white man or anybody. Now, they had that gay reporter on the weekends on CNN.
Don Lemon.
And he came on, and he was there for a while. Then he started talking about that gay business and stuff, and they just threw him off. Now, that's true. Now, you may not want to believe that. He was talking gay, and this happened to him, and this happened that, and this happened that. And the next thing you knew, they had him doing his gay broadcast on Saturday mornings again.
Gay broadcast.
So you want to...
Let's be respectful.
No,
now.
I am, and that's okay.
That.
But he made a point of it. If he would have left
He
that
did
alone...
come out. He did come out on the
if
air.
you'd have left that alone, what he does, what I do behind my closed doors to anybody, is my business. He made it a point, so that's why I'm making it a point.
So you agree with them doing that to him?
Well,
you think that's okay that they did that to him?
It's their business? Yes. It's their business. They can do what they want to do with it. You can't tell them what to do.
do you care, Will? I mean, as a journalist and as someone who is on the air, do you think it's important that African Americans are represented in primetime?
Oh, I think it's important that you have an accurate representation of what's going on in the country. I think that it's good for white Americans to see African Americans in prime time, as well as it's good for blacks. However, I also think that it's a business and it's competitive. And I think if Oprah was in their stable, then she would probably be on prime time on CNN. I think that she probably would. When I look at who's in their stable, and I'm friends with Roland Martin, he would, to me, probably be the most interesting person to watch. But I think from a CNN standpoint, Roland probably doesn't have the broad appeal that they might want at prime time at that point. I think that, personally, Gwen Ifill would be excellent in that spot. I think that she's probably one who has, because of what she's been doing, and sort of has that broad appeal that they may be looking for. But I think, again, it still does not eliminate the fact that within management and how decisions are made, they're made based on who do I feel comfortable with.
Hold on, Roger.
On the bottom line.
Roger.
A couple of things. First of all, we've never been a large part of anchors on national newscasts. So this is nothing new. That's the first thing. And secondly, yes, agitate, but also understand it's like we're coming hat in hand asking the stations to do something for us.
Thank you.
And they're going to do what they want to do. We can push them, but they're going to do what they want to do. Now, so how do we respond? Do we have boycotts of the stations if we don't like them? It can't be just CNN. It's got to be all the other stations, too. And it's not just that issue. You can have anchors that you like and you think are going to do well. They might not actually work out. We see what happened with Katie Couric on CBS. I mean, they were trying to turn their fortunes around. Didn't work with her. So it's not just race, but it also involves ownership. I'm somewhat heartened by the fact that I believe the station's called Bounce TV. That's starting.
Bounce TV being done by Martin Luther King III and several others. That will be a network geared towards African Americans that is not on cable, so that you can actually pick it up over the airwaves. So that's what Bounce is.
There's some hope that maybe that can do some things, but if you don't, getting back to Bill a little bit on this, if you don't own it, you can't. You're not going to control it.
In other words, he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Yeah,
and that's what capitalism is about. And so we cannot expect anything different. But I still have hope that the best of our community would be reflected so that it does open doors for other opportunities. Maybe not financially immediately, but it does open an opportunity for people to see, well, here is a skill level, here's an analytical level, here is what.
But I think in NABJ at least, and Will, you're a member, I'm a member,
I'm a member.
Roger's a member, but NABJ says, hey, we have qualified people out there.
Gwen Ifill is not going to sit on the curvy couch at CNN on the morning because I'm going to be looking for Karen Chintry to see how she's going to hike up that little dress she got. So that's the way it works.
Don't
Bill,
encourage.
I tell you,
Don't
you
encourage.
know what? I try
I'm
not to. I try not
just-
to.
Don't encourage.
No, you
the other
gotta
thing-
say.
Roger,
I mean,
bring some.
Gwen is very talented. I've known Gwen, I think, for most of my career. She would be excellent, I think, in a role like that.
On the curvy couch.
I don't want to see you
Ignore
on a
him,
curvy couch. I know
please.
that.
Ignore him.
Why do you
But
think
all
they
I'm
had
saying-
the curvy couch out there?
All I'm saying is, yes, there should be blacks, Latinos, and the like throughout the different stations. And, I'm encouraged when I do see different moderators for different shows on CNN, on MSNBC. But, they're good. The ownership, the general managers, they're going to do what they want to do.
Okay. and
Well,
on
at
that
CNN
last word.
has a manager who's African American who was put in that spot, who again should be in a position of influence. And again, to dispute what Roger said, if your product is supposed to cover the community, you have a responsibility, whether you're white or not, if you're owning it, to present the community with your talent on air.
Okay, that's got to be the last word, guys, because we're out of time. I tell you, see, I knew you all could take up an hour too. I knew it wouldn't be a problem. We'll see you in about a month, and I so appreciate you being with us today. And there are a lot of positive things happening in our community. Here's Lisa Godley.
House and Senate is in concert, featuring our very own Jay Senate tonight, Friday, July 15th, from 8 until 11 p.m. at the Downing Gross Cultural Arts Center in Newport News. Tickets are $15 and available at the door. Call 757-247-8969 for more information. Iron Street Productions presents Five on the Black Hand Side, a classical theatrical comedy, July 15th through the 24th at Thomas Nelson Community College. Times vary. Call 757-969-1419 for more information. There's a free summer camp for teenagers. Camp Inspired is free for Norfolk residents rising grades 7 through 12, Monday, July 25th through Friday, August 19th. Call 757-747-2679 for more information. This has been your Community Calendar. I'm Lisa Godley.
So I hope you get out there this weekend and take advantage of some of the things that are going on, especially Jay Senate's concert tonight. House and Senate is fabulous. So just putting my own plug there. And before we leave you today, I'd like to say a very special hello to the scholars at the Freedom School in Norfolk. Now, the school is located in the Huntersville section of Norfolk at the Union United Church of Christ. The Norfolk Freedom School is among 136 freedom schools across the country, and the focus is to help low-income students excel in literacy and learn about civic engagement. I had the pleasure of reading to the scholars, and we had a marvelous time. The Freedom School is possible through the generosity of the Hampton Roads Community Foundation and the YWCA Southampton Roads, of which I'm proud to say that I'm a board member. So thank you for joining us on this debut edition of Another View on the Radio. We'd love to hear from you. Send us a post on our website, anotherviewradio.org, and you can become a fan on Facebook. We're listed under Another View. Next week, what is life like in Hampton Roads when you're African American and gay? A frank discussion you won't want to miss next Friday at noon. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. We'll see you next time for Another View.